Welcome, dear listener, to a journey through the annals of time, a serene exploration of one of history's most enduring and fascinating empires, the Ottoman Empire. As we gently drift into the past, imagine a vast landscape stretching from the sun-drenched deserts of Arabia to the verdant plains of Eastern Europe, from the rugged coastlines of North Africa to the majestic peaks of Anatolia. This was the stage upon which the Ottoman Sultans, with their grand visions and intricate courts, played out centuries of power, intrigue, and cultural blossoming. Our focus tonight will be not just on the military might or political machinations that shaped this immense realm, but also on the more intimate, often hidden world of the Ottoman Harem, a place of both confinement and surprising influence, where the lives of concubines, queen mothers, and princesses intertwined with the destiny of the empire itself. The story of the Ottoman Empire begins not with a roar, but with a whisper in the late 13th century in Anatolia, present-day Turkey. Here, amidst the fragmented remnants of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, a small principality emerged, led by a charismatic figure named Osman I. He was the eponymous founder of the Ottoman dynasty, a leader whose name would echo through 6 centuries of history. Picture, if you will, the rugged frontiers of the Byzantine Empire, where various Turkish tribes, known as Ghazis or holy warriors, sought to expand the domains of Islam. Osman, astute and ambitious, managed to unite these disparate groups, channeling their energy and zeal into a cohesive force. His early successes were modest, yet they laid the foundational stones for an empire that would one day rival Rome in its grandeur and longevity. As the 14th century unfurled, Osman's successors, notably Orhan Gazi and Murad I, began to transform this nascent principality into a formidable power. Orhan captured the important Byzantine city of Bursa, making it the first Ottoman capital and a burgeoning center of trade and learning. It was under Orhan that the Janissaries, an elite infantry corps formed from Christian boys levied through the Devshirme system, began to take shape. This unique institution, controversial yet undeniably effective, would become the backbone of the Ottoman military for centuries, a testament to the empire's innovative approach to statecraft. Murad I, a truly pivotal figure, expanded Ottoman territories into the Balkans, securing crucial victories at Kosovo and establishing a strong foothold in Europe. These early sultans were more than just warriors. They were shrewd administrators, patrons of art and architecture, and visionaries who understood the importance of institutionalizing their conquests. They built mosques, bridges, hospitals, and schools, weaving a rich tapestry of Ottoman culture into the fabric of the lands they acquired. The early Ottoman court, while not yet the sprawling palace complexes of later centuries, was already a hub of activity. The Sultan, surrounded by his viziers and advisors, made decisions that impacted the lives of millions. Yet, even in these formative years, the seeds of the harem system were being sown. Concubines, often gifts from conquered lands or purchased from slave markets, began to form a part of the royal household. Their presence was not merely for pleasure. They were also vital for producing male heirs, ensuring the continuity of the dynasty. This system, while seemingly alien to modern sensibilities, was a common practice among many rulers of the era, from the east to the west, driven by the paramount need for succession and the complexities of dynastic politics. The concubines, though often lacking formal power, could, through their offspring, exert a subtle yet profound influence on the future of the empire. As we move deeper into the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire stood poised on the precipice of its golden age. The groundwork laid by Osman, Orhan, and Murad had created a robust and dynamic state, ready to challenge the existing powers of the age, particularly the dwindling Byzantine Empire. The capture of Constantinople, the fabled city that had stood as the bastion of Eastern Christianity for over a millennium, was becoming an increasingly palpable ambition. The sultans of this era, like Bayezid I and Murad II, continued to consolidate power, refine the administrative structure, and nurture the unique blend of Islamic and Turkic traditions that characterized Ottoman identity. They understood that an empire was not just built on conquest, but also on culture, law, and the careful management of its diverse peoples. The story of these early sultans is one of relentless ambition, strategic brilliance, and a remarkable capacity for adaptation. They were not merely tribal chieftains, But sophisticated rulers who embraced new technologies, absorbed different administrative practices, and fostered a vibrant intellectual environment. The nascent Ottoman capital, Bursa, and later Edirne, became melting pots of ideas, attracting scholars, artists, and merchants from across the known world. This cultural exchange was crucial in shaping the unique character of the Ottoman Empire, differentiating it from other Islamic states and setting it apart on the world stage. The empire was not just a military machine. It was a living, breathing entity, constantly evolving, constantly absorbing. As we prepare to delve into the grandeur of Constantinople and the reign of Mehmed the Conqueror, let us reflect on these humble beginnings. From a small principality on the fringes of an expiring empire, a force emerged that would reshape the geopolitical landscape for centuries. The Ottoman Sultans, driven by faith, ambition, and a keen understanding of power, forged an empire that left an indelible mark on history. Their journey, marked by both triumph and tribulation, by both enlightened rule and fierce conquest, is a testament to the enduring human endeavor to build, to create, and to leave a legacy. So, as you settle deeper into your slumber, let the gentle whispers of the past guide you through the story of an empire born of frontier spirit and destined for greatness. The stage is set for an epic narrative of power, passion, and the intricate dance between ruler and ruled, all unfolding within the majestic shadow of the Ottoman Crescent. As our journey through the annals of Ottoman history continues, we now arrive at a pivotal moment, a turning point that would forever alter the course of the empire, and indeed, the world, the conquest of Constantinople. This monumental achievement was the crowning glory of Sultan Mehmed II, a figure so transformative that history would forever know him as Mehmed the Conqueror. Picture a young, ambitious sultan, barely in his early 20s, yet possessing a strategic mind far beyond his years. He inherited an empire that, while powerful, still had the looming presence of the Byzantine capital, a Christian island in an increasingly Islamic sea, a constant reminder of former glories and a potential staging ground for European crusades. The capture of this legendary city, once the heart of the Roman Empire in the East, was not just a military objective. It was a psychological imperative, a fulfillment of ancient prophecies, and a bold declaration of Ottoman might to the entire world. The preparations for the siege of Constantinople were meticulous and unprecedented. Mehmed understood the formidable defenses of the city, particularly the massive Theodosian walls, which had withstood countless sieges over a millennium. He gathered an enormous army, estimated to be between 80,000 and 150,000 soldiers, a vast array of siege engines, and most notably, a revolutionary new weapon, colossal cannons forged specifically for this purpose. Imagine the sheer scale of this undertaking. The sound of hammers ringing as giant cannons, some capable of firing stone balls weighing hundreds of pounds, were cast on sight. The steady march of thousands of soldiers, their banners fluttering in the wind. The formidable Ottoman fleet, being prepared to blockade the city by sea. One of Mehmed's most audacious feats was the overland portage of ships. Unable to break the chain across the Golden Horn, he ordered his fleet to be dragged overland, across a greased slipway, from the Bosphorus into the Golden Horn itself. Picture hundreds of men and oxen, straining against ropes as ships seemingly sailed over hills, a sight that must have utterly bewildered the besieged Byzantines and demoralized them further. The siege began in April 1453. For weeks, the thundering roar of cannons echoed across the ancient city, relentlessly pounding its walls. The defenders, led by the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine V Palaiologos, fought with desperate courage, outnumbered and outmatched, but clinging to their heritage. The fighting was fierce, a testament to the resilience of both sides. Day after day, breaches were made, only to be repaired by the exhausted Byzantines under the cover of night. Yet, the relentless pressure, combined with the sheer superiority of Ottoman firepower and numbers, slowly but surely wore down the city's resolve. The air would have been thick with the smell of smoke, fear, and determination. Finally, on May 29, 1453, after nearly 2 months of relentless assault, the city fell. The final breach was made, and Ottoman soldiers poured into the city. The capture of Constantinople marked a seismic shift in world history. The thousand-year-old Byzantine Empire ceased to exist, and the Ottoman Empire now stood as the dominant power in the eastern Mediterranean. Mehmed, riding triumphantly into the city, immediately went to the magnificent Hagia Sophia, the grand basilica that had served as the heart of Eastern Orthodox Christianity for centuries. He ordered its conversion into a mosque, a symbolic act that transformed the city into the new capital of the Ottoman Empire, henceforth known as Istanbul. This was not merely a conquest, it was a redefinition of identity, a fusion of Byzantine legacy with Islamic culture. With Istanbul as his new capital, Mehmed II embarked on an ambitious program of reconstruction and revitalization. He understood that a grand empire required a grand capital. He encouraged resettlement, inviting people from across his vast domains, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, to live and contribute to the city's burgeoning economy and culture. New mosques, markets, public baths, and schools were constructed. The Topkapi Palace, which would become the heart of Ottoman administration and royal life for centuries, began to take shape under his reign. Imagine the bustling streets, filled with merchants from diverse lands, the vibrant sounds of different languages, and the sight of magnificent new buildings rising from the ashes of the old. Istanbul became a true cosmopolitan hub, a bridge between East and West, a testament to Mehmed's vision. Beyond the grandeur of the capital, Mehmed the Conqueror was also a brilliant administrator and a patron of the arts and sciences. He codified Ottoman law, established new administrative structures, and fostered a vibrant intellectual environment at his court. Scholars, artists, and architects were drawn to Istanbul, contributing to a rich cultural synthesis. He was interested in both Eastern and Western knowledge, inviting Italian artists like Gentile Bellini to his court and commissioning translations of classical Greek texts. This intellectual curiosity exemplified the Ottoman approach to governance and culture, absorbing and adapting the best from various traditions to create something uniquely Ottoman. The empire, under Mehmed, was not just expanding geographically, it was also growing intellectually and culturally. Within this burgeoning empire, the structure of the royal household, including the harem, began to evolve and formalize. While not yet the sprawling complex it would become, the concept of a dedicated space for the sultan's wives, concubines, and female relatives was solidifying. Mehmed's court, like those of his predecessors, featured numerous concubines, chosen for their beauty, intelligence, and potential to produce heirs. The primary role of the concubine in the Ottoman court was to bear sons, thus ensuring the continuity of the dynasty. Unlike European monarchies, where succession was often tied to legitimacy through marriage to royal bloodlines, in the Ottoman system, any son born to the sultan, regardless of the mother's status as a free wife or a slave concubine, was considered legitimate and eligible to ascend the throne. This seemingly simple difference had profound implications for the power dynamics within the palace, creating a fierce competition among concubines to bear the sultan's favored son. The life of a concubine, particularly in these early centuries, was one of both stricture and potential advancement. Most entered the harem as slaves, often purchased from various regions, particularly Circassia, Georgia, and the Balkans, prized for their beauty and perceived grace. Upon entry, they underwent rigorous training, learning Ottoman Turkish, court etiquette, music, dance, and other arts. Their education was comprehensive, designed to make them suitable companions for the sultan, and, if fortunate, mothers of future sultans. Yet, despite the potential for rising through the ranks, their lives were largely confined within the palace walls. Their world revolved around the sultan and the complex hierarchy of the harem. The highest position a concubine could achieve was that of Haseki Sultan, or chief consort, a title that would gain immense power in later centuries. The presence of the harem was not just about the sultan's personal pleasure, it was deeply intertwined with the very fabric of dynastic survival. The Ottoman system lacked primogeniture, meaning there was no fixed rule of succession like firstborn son inherits. Instead, all sons were considered equally eligible, leading to a brutal, yet often effective, system of fratricide. Upon a sultan's death, or sometimes even before, his sons would often engage in a desperate struggle for power, with the victor eliminating his brothers to secure his reign. This practice, though horrifying, was seen by some as a necessary evil to prevent civil war and ensure the stability of the empire. The mothers of these princes, the concubines, would therefore become key players in these power struggles, advocating for their sons, forming alliances, and navigating the treacherous waters of court politics. As the sun sets on Mehmed the Conqueror's remarkable reign, and as Istanbul flourishes under his visionary leadership, the foundations for the later, more intricate, and often dramatic chapters of the Ottoman Harem are firmly in place. The architectural grandeur of the new capital, the sophisticated administrative systems, and the formalized structure of the royal household all speak to an empire that had truly come into its own. Mehmed's legacy was not just territorial expansion. It was the creation of a powerful, confident, and culturally vibrant empire, ready to enter its golden age. As we allow these images to gently fade into the twilight, reflecting on the sheer ambition and transformative power of one man, we prepare to journey deeper into the heart of the empire, towards the reign of its most magnificent sultan, and the fascinating world that unfolded behind the gilded gates of the harem. Sweet dreams. As we gently drift further into the rich tapestry of Ottoman history, our gaze now turns to the resplendent era often regarded as the empire's golden age, the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. Imagine a time when the Ottoman Empire reached the zenith of its power, wealth, and cultural brilliance, extending its influence across 3 continents. This era, spanning from 1520 to 1566, was dominated by a sultan whose name, in the West, became synonymous with grandeur and might, and in the East was revered as Kanuni, the lawgiver. Suleiman was not merely a conqueror. He was a statesman, a patron of the arts, and a reformer, whose impact resonated far beyond the battlefields and palace walls. Suleiman inherited a vast and formidable empire from his father Selim I, and set about consolidating and expanding it with remarkable strategic acumen. His military campaigns were legendary, extending Ottoman control deep into Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Picture the formidable Ottoman armies, well-trained and disciplined, marching across the plains of Hungary, culminating in the decisive victory at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526. This triumph shattered the Kingdom of Hungary and opened the gates for further Ottoman expansion into Central Europe, bringing the empire to the very doorstep of Vienna. Though Vienna itself resisted 2 major sieges, the Ottoman presence in Europe was firmly established, shaping the geopolitical landscape for centuries to come. To the east, Suleiman confronted the Safavid Empire of Persia, securing vital territories and establishing the borders that largely define modern-day Iraq and Iran. On the seas, the Ottoman navy, under the command of legendary admirals like Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, dominated the Mediterranean, challenging European naval supremacy and controlling crucial trade routes. This was an empire at its territorial peak, a global power with a reach that commanded respect and fear. Beyond military prowess, Suleiman was deeply committed to legal reform, earning him the epithet the lawgiver. He oversaw a comprehensive revision of Ottoman law, streamlining and codifying existing legislation and issuing new decrees. This body of law, known as the Kanunum, addressed a wide range of issues, from taxation and land tenure to criminal justice and the organization of the military. Imagine a system designed to bring order and fairness to a vast and diverse empire, balancing Islamic law, Sharia, with secular regulations to ensure justice and stability for all his subjects, regardless of their faith or ethnicity. This legal framework provided the bedrock of Ottoman governance for centuries, a testament to Suleiman's vision of an ordered and prosperous society. The reign of Suleiman was also a golden age for Ottoman art, architecture, and culture. He was a magnificent patron, fostering an environment where artistic expression flourished. Imagine the breathtaking beauty of the mosques, bridges, and public buildings constructed during his era, many designed by the empire's most celebrated architect, Mimar Sinan. Sinan, often compared to Michelangelo for his genius, designed hundreds of structures, including the majestic Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul. Picture its soaring domes, elegant minarets, and intricate tile work, a symphony in stone that still dominates the Istanbul skyline, embodying the power and aesthetic sophistication of the empire. This mosque was not just a place of worship. It was a complex that included hospitals, schools, and soup kitchens, serving the needs of the community and reflecting the Sultan's beneficence. Calligraphy, Miniature painting, ceramics, textiles, and jewelry all reached new heights of artistic refinement during this period, leaving a legacy of exquisite craftsmanship that is admired worldwide today. The sounds of poets reciting verses, the sight of intricate patterns being woven into carpets, the vibrant colors of Iznik tiles, all contributed to the rich cultural tapestry of Suleiman's Istanbul. Now, let us turn our attention to the heart of the Ottoman palace, the imperial harem, which during Suleiman's reign gained unprecedented prominence and influence. This was not merely a collection of concubines, it was a highly organized institution, a society within a society, governed by its own strict hierarchy and complex rules. At its apex stood the Valid Sultan, the Queen Mother, followed by the Haseki Sultans, the chief consorts, and then various ranks of concubines, servants, and eunuchs. The harem was a secluded world, physically separated from the male administrative sections of the Topkapi Palace by high walls and guarded gates. Yet its inhabitants, particularly the sultan's favorites and the mothers of princes, could exert profound influence over imperial affairs. The most famous and influential figure within Suleiman's harem was undoubtedly Hurrem Sultan, known in the West as Roxolana. She was a woman of extraordinary intelligence, beauty, and ambition. Originally from Ruthenia, part of modern-day Ukraine, who entered the harem as a slave concubine. Hurrem managed to do what no other concubine had done before. She captivated Suleiman's heart to such an extent that he married her legally, breaking centuries of Ottoman tradition which dictated that sultans should not marry their concubines. This act elevated her status significantly, granting her immense power and prestige within the palace and beyond. Imagine the whispers and intrigues this unprecedented marriage must have caused within the court and throughout the empire. Hurrem's influence extended beyond her personal relationship with the Sultan. She actively engaged in political affairs, advising Suleiman on matters of state and corresponding with foreign rulers. She initiated numerous charitable projects, constructing mosques, schools, baths, and a hospital for women, particularly in Jerusalem and Mecca, showcasing her piety and public spiritedness. Her power was evident in the appointments of officials, the intricate network of alliances she forged, and the fierce competition she faced from other factions within the court, including those supporting Suleiman's eldest son, Prince Mustafa, born to a different concubine. The rivalry between Hurrem and Mustafa's mother, Mahidevran Sultan, became legendary, a testament to the high stakes involved in securing the succession. The presence of the eunuchs was crucial to the functioning and security of the harem. These castrated men, often of African origin, served as guardians, administrators, and intermediaries between the secluded female world and the outside male world. They held significant power within the harem's hierarchy, with the chief black eunuch, the Kızlar Ağası, becoming one of the most powerful figures in the entire palace. Imagine these silent, watchful figures moving through the labyrinthine corridors, overseeing the daily lives of hundreds of women, ensuring order, and delivering messages between the Sultan and his female household. Their loyalty was paramount, and their position often gave them unique insights and influence over court affairs. The daily life within the harem, while confined, was far from monotonous. It was a bustling, self-contained world with its own routines, hierarchies, and forms of entertainment. Women learned to play musical instruments, recite poetry, engage in intricate embroidery, and discuss current events through the filtered news that reached them. They lived in lavish apartments, adorned with exquisite carpets, tiles, and silks, a stark contrast to the often humble origins of many who entered its gates. The sheer number of women, from concubines and servants to dressers and bath attendants, meant a constant hum of activity, overseen by the highly disciplined hierarchy. Yet, beneath the surface of luxury and cultural refinement, the harem was also a place of intense competition, particularly among the mothers of princes. The lack of a clear rule of primogeniture meant that every son of the sultan was a potential heir, leading to a brutal survival of the fittest mentality. Mothers would vie fiercely for the sultan's favor, knowing that their son's future, and by extension their own security and influence, depended on it. This system, while ensuring that only the most capable or most ruthless son ascended the throne, also led to tragic outcomes, including the elimination of rival princes and their mothers. Hurrem's own life was deeply intertwined with this struggle for succession, as she tirelessly worked to secure the throne for her sons, ultimately leading to the tragic execution of Prince Mustafa, an event that deeply stained Suleiman's otherwise magnificent reign. As the long and glorious reign of Suleiman the Magnificent drew to a close, the empire he bequeathed was at its peak, yet the seeds of future challenges were perhaps beginning to subtly emerge. The increasing power of the harem, particularly the sultanate of women that would follow, while demonstrating the influence of individual women, also hinted at a shift in power dynamics within the palace that would have long-term implications. As we slowly move away from this era of unparalleled splendor, allowing the images of grand mosques and intricate palace life to gently recede, we prepare to delve deeper into the fascinating world of the harem and its evolving role in shaping the destiny of the Ottoman Empire. May your rest be as profound as the history we explore. Having explored the magnificent reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, we now delve deeper into the fascinating and often misunderstood world of the Ottoman harem itself, particularly as it evolved from a mere collection of concubines into a powerful and intricately organized institution. Imagine the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, not just as a seat of government, but as a sprawling microcosm, a city within a city, where hundreds, sometimes thousands of women resided, each with a defined place in a complex hierarchy. The word harem itself comes from the Arabic harem, meaning forbidden or sacred, denoting a private, inviolable space, off limits to all men except the sultan, his sons, and the eunuchs who guarded it. This was a world of beauty, intrigue, education, and profound, albeit indirect, power. At the pinnacle of the harem's hierarchy stood the Valid Sultan, the Queen Mother. Her position was arguably the most powerful woman in the empire, especially if her son was a young or weak sultan. She was the matriarch of the dynasty, holding sway over the entire female household and often acting as a crucial advisor to her son on matters of state. Imagine her chambers, lavishly decorated, serving as a hub for petitioners, eunuchs, and high-ranking women of the court. Her influence was immense. She controlled vast financial resources, including waqfs, charitable endowments, and could sway appointments, dismiss officials, and even interfere in foreign policy. The Valid Sultan was not merely a mother. She was a political force, a symbol of dynastic continuity, and a crucial bridge between the sultan and the often hidden world of the harem. Below the Valid Sultan were the Haseki Sultans, the chief consorts, the most favored concubines who had borne the sultan's sons. While not all concubines became Hasekis, those who did gain significant prestige and often their own substantial incomes and apartments within the palace. Recall Hurrem Sultan from Suleiman's reign, whose unique status as a legally married wife elevated the position of Haseki to unprecedented levels. This rise in the Haseki's prominence laid the groundwork for the period known as the Sultanate of Women, Kadınlar Sultanatı, a fascinating era from roughly the mid-16th to mid-17th centuries, where women of the imperial harem, primarily the Valid Sultans and Haseki Sultans, wielded exceptional political power. Imagine these intelligent, ambitious women, often of humble origins, navigating the treacherous currents of court politics, forming alliances, engaging in correspondence, and manipulating events from behind the veil of seclusion. The lives of the thousands of women within the harem varied greatly depending on their status. Many were odaliks, general female attendants or servants, who performed daily chores, from cooking and cleaning to assisting the higher-ranking women. They might eventually become concubines if they caught the sultan's eye, but for many, their lives were spent in service. Others were kalfas, mistresses of specific departments, or ustas, forewomen, holding supervisory roles within the highly structured environment. Education was a significant component of harem life. Young girls, often entering the palace at a young age, received comprehensive training. They were taught Ottoman Turkish, Persian, and sometimes Arabic, alongside lessons in etiquette, music, dance, poetry, and needlework. This education was not just for the sultan's pleasure. It equipped them with the skills to manage households, administer endowments, and engage in sophisticated conversation, reflecting a society that valued refined manners and intellectual curiosity even within the confines of the harem. The eunuchs, as mentioned before, were integral to the functioning of the harem and the entire palace. There were two main types: the black eunuchs, primarily responsible for guarding the harem and acting as intermediaries, and the white eunuchs, who served in the outer sections of the palace and often held administrative roles. The Kızlar, or chief black eunuch, was an extraordinarily powerful figure. He was the main channel of communication between the Sultan and the harem, overseeing its finances and administration, and often serving as a trusted confidant to the valid Sultan and the Sultan himself. Imagine these figures, often feared but also relied upon, navigating the complex web of power dynamics, carrying messages, delivering petitions, and sometimes even influencing imperial decisions. Their unique position, outside the traditional male lines of succession and power, allowed them a degree of loyalty and trust from the sultans that other officials might not command. Despite its image of opulent seclusion, the harem was not entirely cut off from the outside world. Through the eunuchs and other intermediaries, its inhabitants were aware of political developments, court intrigues, and even foreign affairs. They received news, corresponded with the outside, and often used their influence to promote their families or protect their interests. For example, many Valid sultans and hasikis engaged in significant charitable endowments, waqfs establishing mosques, bridges, schools, and hospitals throughout the empire. These charitable acts were not just expressions of piety. They were also ways for these powerful women to project their influence, establish their legacy, and gain public favor. Imagine the widespread impact of these philanthropic endeavors, bringing education, healthcare, and infrastructure to communities across the vast Ottoman lands, all initiated by women from within the secluded walls of the harem. The daily rhythms of harem life were governed by strict protocol and the changing needs of the sultan. The women's days would begin early, with prayers, then various duties, lessons, and entertainment. Music and dance were highly valued, and the harem often had its own orchestras and performers. There were baths, gardens, and private apartments designed for comfort and beauty. The inner courtyards would bustle with activity during the day, yet maintain an air of quiet efficiency. Even in this restricted environment, social networks formed, friendships blossomed, and rivalries simmered. The Sultan's visits were carefully orchestrated events, adding an element of anticipation and competition, as each concubine hoped to capture his attention and, perhaps, bear him a son. However, it is crucial to understand that while the harem offered opportunities for power and luxury, it also entailed significant restrictions and risks. The women were, in essence, property of the Sultan, and their lives were dictated by his will and the complex rules of the institution. Competition for the Sultan's favor was fierce, and the stakes were incredibly high, especially for the mothers of princes. The infamous practice of fratricide, where a new sultan would execute his brothers to prevent civil war, cast a long shadow over the lives of princely mothers, creating intense pressure and anxiety. Imagine the immense relief or despair that mothers must have felt upon the ascension of their son, or the tragic news of his elimination. The golden cage, for all its beauty, was still a cage, and the line between favor and oblivion could be thin. The legacy of the Ottoman harem is complex and multifaceted. It was a place of confinement, yet also a stage for remarkable female agency and power. It housed extraordinary women who, despite their restricted lives, managed to influence the course of an empire for centuries. Their stories, often obscured by historical narratives focused solely on male rulers, offer a unique glimpse into the intricate workings of one of the world's greatest empires. As we gently transition from the inner sanctum of the harem, with its whispers of intrigue and rustling silks, we begin to feel the subtle shifts that would challenge the empire's golden age. The stability it had enjoyed would face new pressures, leading us toward the era of decline and reform. Let the intricate dance of power within the harem's walls settle in your mind as you drift deeper into peaceful slumber. As the echoes of Suleiman the Magnificent's golden age begin to softly recede, our historical journey now guides us into a period of profound transformation for the Ottoman Empire, an era often characterized by decline, reform, and shifting dynamics. This was not a sudden collapse, but rather a gradual process stretching from the late 16th century through the 18th century, marked by internal challenges, external pressures, and ultimately attempts at renewal. Imagine a grand river once flowing powerfully, now encountering various obstacles, some natural, some man-made, causing its course to slow, to meander, and at times to break into smaller, less forceful streams. This metaphor helps us understand the complex interplay of factors that began to affect the once invincible Ottoman state. One of the most significant internal shifts was the changing nature of the Sultanate itself. After Suleiman, a series of less capable or less engaged sultans ascended the throne. The practice of fratricide, intended to secure stable succession, gradually gave way to the cage system, cafes, where potential heirs were confined to isolated apartments within the Topkapi Palace. While this spared their lives, it often left them ill-prepared for the immense responsibilities of governing a vast empire. Imagine a prince spending decades in seclusion, educated within the confines of the palace, but largely divorced from the realities of military command, administration, or foreign policy. When such a prince eventually became sultan, he often lacked the practical experience and decisive leadership that had characterized earlier, more active rulers. This created a power vacuum, which was increasingly filled by other factions within the court, most notably the Grand Viziers, the Janissaries, and as we have explored, the women of the imperial harem. The Janissaries, once the elite fighting force and backbone of the Ottoman army, also underwent a significant transformation. From being a highly disciplined and loyal corps, they gradually became a powerful, often unruly political force. Imagine a military unit that, over centuries, has gained immense influence, now using its power to demand higher wages, interfere in succession disputes, and even depose sultans. Their ranks were no longer solely filled through the devshirm system. Rather, membership became hereditary, and they engaged in trades and crafts, diluting their military effectiveness. This internal decay of a once formidable institution weakened the empire's military capabilities, making it less effective against increasingly powerful European armies. Economically, the empire faced new challenges. The age of exploration had shifted global trade routes from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, bypassing the Ottoman heartlands and reducing the lucrative customs duties that had once enriched the imperial treasury. Imagine the caravans of spices and silks, once flowing through Istanbul, now taking different paths across the oceans. Furthermore, a flood of silver from the Americas led to inflation, destabilizing the Ottoman economy. While the empire remained wealthy, these shifts meant a relative decline compared to the rising mercantile powers of Europe. Corruption within the bureaucracy, particularly in the collection of taxes, further strained the state's finances. The once meticulously organized administrative system began to show cracks, leading to inefficiencies and a growing disparity between the central authority and its distant provinces. Despite these challenges, the Ottoman Empire was not stagnant. It was a resilient entity. Throughout this period, there were various attempts at reform. Some sultans and grand viziers recognized the need to modernize the army, streamline the bureaucracy, and address economic woes. Imagine reformers striving to reassert central authority, to discipline the Janissaries, and to introduce new military technologies. However, these efforts were often met with fierce resistance from entrenched interests, particularly from the Janissaries and religious scholars who viewed change as a threat to tradition. Reform was a slow, often painful process marked by cycles of progress and setbacks. The impact of the Sultanate of Women continued during this era. Figures like Kösem Sultan and Turhan Hatice Sultan, both Valid sultans, wielded enormous power, effectively ruling through their young or inexperienced sons. Kösem Sultan in particular was one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history, acting as regent for two of her sons and one grandson. Imagine her, a formidable political operator, navigating the treacherous waters of court intrigue, forming alliances, and making critical decisions that shaped the empire's destiny. While sometimes seen as contributing to the decline by diverting power from the Sultan, these women often provided crucial stability during periods of weak male leadership. They managed the vast finances of the harem, patronized architecture, and engaged in complex diplomacy, demonstrating remarkable political acumen within their restricted sphere. Their influence highlights that even in a highly patriarchal society, extraordinary women could find avenues to exert significant control. External pressures also intensified. The growing strength of European powers, particularly the Habsburg monarchy in Austria and the emerging Russian Empire, posed significant military challenges. The Ottomans, once technologically superior, found themselves falling behind in military innovation. Imagine the clash of two great empires, the Ottomans and the Russians, vying for control over the Black Sea region, leading to protracted and costly wars. The signing of treaties that granted European powers significant trade and legal concessions within Ottoman territory, known as the capitulations, further chipped away at Ottoman sovereignty and economic independence, creating a lasting source of grievance. The artistic and cultural landscape, while still vibrant, also reflected these changing times. The grand, monumental scale of Suleiman's era gave way to more intricate, often ornate forms of expression. Miniature painting, tile work, and calligraphy continued to flourish, but perhaps with less of the boundless confidence of the earlier period. New architectural styles emerged, influenced by European Baroque and Rococo tastes, yet still retaining a distinct Ottoman character. Imagine the construction of elegant new palaces and pavilions along the Bosphorus, reflecting a desire to integrate European aesthetics while maintaining Ottoman grandeur. By the dawn of the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was often referred to as the sick man of Europe by Western powers, a term that, while dismissive, reflected its perceived weakening. However, this period of decline should not be viewed as a static collapse. It was a dynamic process of adaptation, resistance, and internal struggle. The empire was still immense, its cultural influence profound, and its ability to surprise its adversaries remained. The seeds of radical reform, which would fully blossom in the 19th century, were being sown during these turbulent times, as Ottoman statesmen increasingly recognized the need for fundamental change to survive in a rapidly modernizing world. As we conclude this chapter on decline and reform, allowing the complex interplay of internal decay and external pressures to settle in your thoughts, we prepare to witness the empire's final, dramatic attempts at reinvention. The subtle shifts within the palace, the challenges to military might, and the changing economic tides all set the stage for a dramatic final act. Let the weight of these centuries of transformation guide you deeper into a restful sleep as the Ottoman Empire, ever resilient, prepares for its ultimate metamorphosis. Our long journey through the history of the Ottoman Empire now brings us to its twilight, to the final tumultuous centuries marked by intense efforts at modernization, a struggle for survival in a rapidly changing world, and ultimately, its transformation into the Republic of Turkey. This period, from the 19th century to the early 20th century, is one of dramatic change, marked by the rise of new political ideologies, the escalating pressures from European powers, and the internal struggle to redefine an ancient empire. Imagine the sun, once at its zenith, now slowly descending towards the horizon, casting long shadows but also illuminating new pathways. The 19th century witnessed a series of ambitious reform movements known as the Tanzimat era, 1839 to 1876, meaning reorganization. Ottoman leaders, acutely aware of the empire's military and economic weakness compared to European powers, sought to modernize the state apparatus from top to bottom. Imagine a concerted effort to emulate Western advancements. The army was professionalized and equipped with modern weaponry. A new, secular legal system was introduced, challenging centuries of Sharia law dominance. And a modern education system, including universities and military academies, was established. Communications improved with the introduction of telegraph lines and railway networks, binding the vast empire more closely. Financial reforms aimed at centralizing tax collection and establishing a national bank were also undertaken. These reforms were driven by a sense of urgency, a desperate attempt to strengthen the empire and regain its footing on the world stage. However, these reforms were not without significant challenges and internal resistance. Conservative elements, including some religious scholars and the remaining Janissaries, often viewed these changes as an abandonment of Islamic tradition and a threat to their established privileges. The Janissaries, now a bastion of resistance to modernization rather than its instrument, were finally abolished by Sultan Mahmud II in 1826 in an event known as the Auspicious Incident, a brutal but necessary step to clear the path for military reform. Yet, even with this obstacle removed, The process of reform was slow and often inconsistent, hindered by internal political instability, financial crises, and the immense logistical challenges of governing such a diverse and widespread empire. Economically, the empire became increasingly indebted to European powers, particularly Britain and France, which often led to greater European influence over Ottoman affairs. Imagine European bankers and diplomats gaining leverage over the Sultan's treasury, leading to the establishment of the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, which effectively put large parts of the empire's revenue under foreign control. This economic subjugation was a painful blow to Ottoman sovereignty and fueled nationalist sentiments among various ethnic groups within the empire. The rise of nationalism was another profound challenge. Throughout the 19th century, ethnic groups within the Ottoman Empire, Serbs, Greeks, Bulgarians, Armenians, and Arabs, began to demand greater autonomy or even full independence, inspired by nationalist movements in Europe. Imagine a mosaic of peoples, once held together by the multi-ethnic and multi-religious framework of the Ottoman Empire, now pulling apart, each seeking their own independent destiny. This led to a series of revolts and wars in the Balkans, often encouraged and exploited by rival European powers like Russia and Austria-Hungary, further weakening the empire's territorial integrity. Amidst these turbulent changes, the role of the Ottoman sultans themselves continued to evolve. Some, like Sultan Abdulhamid II, tried to centralize power and assert autocratic control, often suppressing liberal movements while simultaneously continuing modernization efforts, particularly in military and communication infrastructure. He saw himself as the last bastion against the disintegration of the empire. However, his autocratic rule eventually led to widespread discontent, particularly among a new generation of Western-educated Ottoman intellectuals and military officers. This rising intellectual and military class gave birth to the Young Turks, a reformist and nationalist political movement that emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Imagine a clandestine network of young, educated individuals, many trained in European military academies or universities, who believed that only radical political change could save the empire. They advocated for constitutional government, parliamentary rule, and a stronger, more centralized Ottoman identity, often emphasizing Turkic elements. Their vision was to transform the old empire into a modern constitutional state capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with European powers. The Young Turks' most significant achievement was the Young Turk Revolution of 1908, which forced Sultan Abdulhamid II to restore the 1876 Ottoman constitution and reconvene the Ottoman parliament. Imagine the excitement and hope that swept through Istanbul as people celebrated the return of constitutional rule, envisioning a new era of freedom and progress. This marked the beginning of the Second Constitutional Era, a period of intense political debate, factionalism, and further attempts at reform. However, the Young Turks themselves were divided, and their rule was often characterized by instability and authoritarian tendencies, particularly as they struggled to maintain control over the empire's fragmenting territories. The final act of the Ottoman Empire played out against the backdrop of World War I. The Young Turk leadership, primarily the triumvirate of Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Samal Pasha, made the fateful decision to align the Ottoman Empire with the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary. This decision proved catastrophic. Imagine the empire, already weakened by internal strife and external pressures, now drawn into a global conflict of unprecedented scale. Despite some initial successes, like the Gallipoli campaign, the Ottoman Empire ultimately suffered devastating defeats, losing vast territories in the Middle East to the Allied powers and experiencing immense human and economic cost. The war also saw tragic events, most notably the Armenian genocide, a dark chapter that continues to be a subject of intense historical debate and sorrow. The defeat in World War I sealed the empire's fate. The Ottoman Empire was carved up by the victorious Allied powers, and Istanbul was occupied. From the ashes of the empire, a new nationalist movement emerged in Anatolia, led by the charismatic military commander Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Imagine the last sultan, Mehmed VI, effectively a prisoner in his own capital, as a new power base rose in the heartland of Anatolia. Ataturk, a hero of Gallipoli, rallied the Turkish people against foreign occupation, leading the Turkish War of Independence. This fierce struggle culminated in the abolition of the Ottoman Sultanate on November 1, 1922, ending 6 centuries of imperial rule. The last sultan departed Istanbul on a British warship, a poignant symbol of the empire's final demise. On October 29, 1923, the Republic of Turkey was officially proclaimed, with Mustafa Kemal Ataturk as its first president. This marked not just the end of an empire, but the birth of a modern, secular nation-state, fundamentally different from its imperial predecessor. Ataturk embarked on radical reforms, abolishing the caliphate, replacing Islamic law with a secular legal code, adopting the Latin alphabet, and promoting Western-style education and social changes. Imagine a nation determined to shed its imperial past and embrace modernity, forging a new identity for its people. The history of the Ottoman Empire is a profound narrative of rise, expansion, glory, and ultimately, transformation. It was an empire that built magnificent cities, fostered diverse cultures, created innovative legal systems, and endured for over 600 years. While its decline was a prolonged process, its legacy remains deeply embedded in the cultural, architectural, and political landscapes of the many nations that once formed its vast domains. As our journey concludes, we reflect on the grandeur of its sultans, the intrigues of its harems, the resilience of its people, and the enduring impact it has left on the world. Let the sweep of this incredible history lull you into a deep and peaceful rest, knowing that even in endings, there are always new beginnings. Sweet dreams.